Prabhu, we can't hear you.
I think we lost him. Probably log in again.
Oh, okay. Okay. Yeah, so
Yeah.
okay. Yeah, so
Let me try to call him on another number. He might be facing some technical issues.
yeah.
Yeah, I think Prabhuji is back now.
Oh, wonderful.
Oh, wonderful. Sorry, I don't know what happened there. I think the out there. So, can you hear me?
Yes, Prabhuji. Loud and clear.
Okay, okay. We'll start with the Jai Radha Mother prayers and go into invocation prayers. Yeah. Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari Yashodanandana Bhaja Janaranjana Yashodanandana Bhaja Janaranjana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Yamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Om Agyantimirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Datati Swapatantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yutapatakamalam Shri Guru Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Natanvitam tam sajivam sadvaitam savadutam parijana saitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Pada Samagna Lita Shri Vishakanvitamscha He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dina Bandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostate Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vanchakalpadurubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Evacha Patitanama Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaura Bhaktavinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Narayan Nam Namaskritya Naram Cheva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Yasam Tato Jayamudirayat Nastaprayeshu Bhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavati Uttama Shloke Bhakti Bhavati Naistaki. Om Namo Bhagavati Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavati Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavati Vasudevaya. Okay, so today we'll be continuing with our Srimad Bhagavatam reading. So we'll read from Srimad Bhagavatam Canto 1, Chapter 9, 28, verse 28, verse 29, and verse 30. So, verse 28. Okay, so Dharmata kama mokshamscha sahapaya yatha mune nanakyal tyesheshu varnayam asha tatvavet. Okay, just go into the synonyms then. Oh, actually, we'll just go straight into the translations. So then he described the occupational duties of different orders and statuses of life, citing instances from history where he was for himself well acquainted with the truth. So this is so report by His Divine Grace, the Swami Prabhupada. Incidents mentioned in the Vedic literature, such as the Puranas, Mahabharata, and Ramayana, are factually historical narrations that took place sometime in the past. Although not in any chronological order, such historical facts, being instructive for ordinary men, were assorted without chronological reference. Besides that, they happen on different planets, nay, in different universes, and thus the descriptions of the narrations is sometimes measured by 3 dimensions. We are simply concerned with the instructive lessons of such incidents, even though they are not in order or limited range of understanding. Bhishmadev described such narrations before Maharaj Yudhishthira in reply to his different questions. Okay, so I'll just make some mention on the purport, and then we'll move on to the next verse, and we'll discuss it accordingly. So, we discussed about occupational duties last week. There's interesting points that were raised, and we discussed about how different people have different occupational duties, and there are different divisions in the human society, and how those divisions actually currently exist in the world that we currently live in, and how they used to manifest in the past. So just to get some reference to this, we can look at Bhagavad Gita, verse 4.13, which mentions how the divisions of society has been ordered by Lord Krishna himself. Lord Krishna mentions in verse 4.13, Chaturvarnyam Maya System Gunakarma Vipagasha Tasya Kartaram Apimam Vidhi Akartaram Avyayam. According to the 3 modes of material nature and the work associated with them, the 4 divisions of human society are created by me. And although I am the creator of the system, you should know that I am the non-doer being, that I am yet the non-doer being unchangeable. So we hear about this idea of duty, and these 4 divisions of human society, of the 4 varnas and the 4 ashrams. The 4 varnas being the four ashrams being the Grahastha ashram, the Brahmachari ashram, the Varnaprastha ashram, and the Sannyasi ashram. And then we have the Varnas, which are the divisions, which are known as the Brahmana division, Kshatriya division, the Vaishya, and the Sudra division. So, depending on our psychophysical condition and according to our modes of material nature that we've acquired, we are situated in these four varnas or ashrams. And anything outside those varnas or those ashrams is a life of is considered to be a life of challenge and also sinful activity as well. So we have to consider where we are situated in these four varnas and four ashrams in order for us to be able to make progress in Krishna consciousness. So the idea of duty is also explained in Bhagavad Gita. Lord Krishna in verse 2.47 mentions you have a right to perform your prescribed duty, but you are not entitled to the fruits of action. Never consider yourself the cause of the result of your activities, and never be attached to not doing your duty. And His Grace Radhiksham Prabhu mentioned very, very beautifully that the difference between attachment and attraction in the last session. He mentions that if there's a rasgulla and you're attached, you'll go out of your way to find a way to get those rasgullas. But if you have attraction, it means that if the rasgulla is there, or whether it's not there, that is fine. It is okay both ways. But that is the difference between attraction and attachment. There's a very good learning point for myself. So this verse Bhagavad Gita 2.47 explains that there are three considerations with regards to prescribed duty. With this, in terms of this verse, Prabhupada mentions that there are three considerations here, and this is really important to note. So the three considerations are that prescribed duties, capricious work, and inaction. So the understanding the distinction between the three will give you a clear idea in terms of how to act in your particular situation. So it mentions prescribed duties are activities enjoined in terms of one's acquired modes of material nature. Capricious work means actions without the sanction of authority, and inaction means not performing one's prescribed duty. The Lord then advises that Arjuna should not be inactive, but he should perform his prescribed duty without being attached to the result. One is attached to the result of his work, is also the cause of the action. Thus, he is the enjoyer or sufferer of the result of such actions. And as far as prescribed duties are concerned, it can be fitted into three subdivisions, which is known as emergency work and desired activities, routine work performed as an obligation in terms of the spiritual injunctions and without desire for results, is action in the mode of goodness, work which results, with results becomes the cause of bondage. Therefore, such work is not auspicious. Everyone has his proprietary right in regard to prescribed duties, but should act without attachment to the result. Such disinterested obligatory duties doubtlessly lead one to have the liberation. So Arjuna was therefore advised by the Lord to fight as a matter of duty without attachment to the result. His non-participation in a battle is another side of attachment. Such attachment never leads one to the path of salvation. Any attachment, positive or negative, is cause for bondage. Inaction is sinful. Therefore, fighting as a matter of duty was the only auspicious path of salvation for Arjuna. So these distinctions with regards to occupational duties and duty are very important when we address the issue of duty in our sadhana bhakti. It so happens in devotional life that we get there's so many activities, not just in spiritual life, but also managing the household affairs, managing our lives, that we question this idea of duty. What is actually our duty? And here, clearly, with clear reference and distinction, we can understand how we can actually position ourselves well in our own duty. So Lord Krishna explains further about this idea of duty. In verse 3.35 of Bhagavad Gita, Shreyam Sva Dharmo Vigunaha Para Dharmasva Anustita Swadharme Nidaram Shreya Para Dharmo Bhava Phala. Therefore, it is far better to discharge one's prescribed duties, even though faultily, than another duties perfectly. Destruction in the course of performing one's own duty is better than engaging in another's duty, for to follow another's path is dangerous. And some of the considerations we have to make when understanding our duty are quite complex, because the economic situation is also very complex. It's the complex world that we live in. And then in Srimad Bhagavatam, we have some further clarity about duty as well. In verse 14, chapter 2 of 21. Atapumbir Trijashreshta Varnashram Vibhagasha Swanukitasya Dharmasya Samsudhi Haritoshanam. O best among the twice born, it is therefore concluded that the highest perfection of life one can achieve by discharging the duties prescribed for one's own occupation according to caste divisions and orders of life is to please the personality of Godhead. So the persons who are in goodness, they are called Brahmanas. Not that Krishna says by birthright only. Chaturvarnyam Mayasishtam Guna Karma Vibhagas. There's no question of birth simply by quality. By quality, the division is everywhere. Intelligent class of men, administrative class of men, productive class of men, and labor class of men. And this is Brahman, Sudra, Kshatriya, Vaishya, etc. So we have to raise ourselves in the mode of in the goodness platform of human civilization, then revive our transcendental consciousness of Krishna consciousness. So again, in Srimad Bhagavatam, we find the verse that appears, Evam Prashana Manusho, Bhagavad Bhakti Yogataha, Bhagavatatva Vigyanam Mukta Sangasya Jayate. Thus established in the mode of unalloyed goodness, the man whose mind has been enlivened by contact with devotional service to the Lord gains positive scientific knowledge of the person and the personality of Godhead in the stage of liberation from all material association. So these are significant points about occupational duties and how we can position ourselves in our own occupational duties. Okay, so we'll move on to the next verse. And this verse is the Uttarayana. This is the verse which describes the sun running into the northern hemisphere. So I'll just read the Sanskrit, and we'll go on to the translation. Dharmam pravastastasya sakalaha pratyopati pashtita yo yoginas chandra mrityo vanchitas tata ayanaha. While Bhishma was describing occupational duties, the sun's course ran into the northern hemisphere. This period is desired by mystics who desire their will. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. The perfect yogis or mystics can leave the material body at their own sweet will at a suitable time and go to a suitable planet desired by them. In the Bhagavad Gita 8.24, it said that self-realized souls who have exactly identified themselves with the interest of the Supreme Lord can generally leave the material body during the time of the fire god's effulgence and when the sun is in the northern horizon, and thus achieve the transcendental sky. So those in this verse, in verse 8.24, explains that those who know the Supreme Brahman attain that Supreme by passing away from the world during the influence of the fiery god, in the light at an auspicious moment of the day, during the fortnight of the waxing moon, or during the 6 months when the sun travels in the north. So continuing, in the Vedas, these times are considered auspicious for quitting the body, and they are taken advantage of by the expert mystics who have perfected the system. Perfection of yoga means attainment of such supermental states as to be able to leave the material body as desired. Yogis can also reach any planet within no time without a material vehicle. The yogis can reach the highest planetary system within a short time, and this is impossible for the materialist. Even attempting to reach the highest planet will take millions of years at a speed of millions of miles per hour. This is a different science, and Bhishmadev knew well how to utilize it. He was waiting for the suitable moment to quit his material body, and the golden opportunity arrived when he was instructing his noble grandsons, the Pandavas. He thus prepared himself to quit his body before the exalted Lord Sri Krishna, the pious Pandavas, and the great sages headed by Bhagwan Vyas, etc., all great souls. So there is something we need to also understand about yogis. There are three things we need to understand. There are yogis, bhogis, and tyagis. And then there's also the devotees. Now, the yogis are capable of achieving mystic perfection and leaving their bodies at will at an auspicious time. So these mystic yoga practices involve perfection of eight siddhis, and these siddhis are also explained in Vedanta Sutra in much detail. The bhogis are those that use Vedanta because they want to enjoy the material world in the heavenly planets. They especially revert to the Upasana kind of the Vedas, so they can ascend to heavenly abodes and enjoy their immaterial opulence. So there's different types, and then there's the tyagis, the renunciates, who renounce the material world, who renounce. Well, but Srila Prabhupada makes the point of what is there to renounce? It didn't belong to you in the first place. So how can you renounce something that didn't belong to you? It's like going into, there's 2 points. It's like going into a bank and saying, I renounce it all. Actually, the money didn't belong to you anyway. It belonged to the bank. So how can you renounce something that doesn't belong to you? Or the alternative is to say, to renounce something that's not actually belonging to you. This is called Falgu Vairagya. Real Vairagya, real renunciation means to renounce, but to renounce material things when we're not actually connecting those things in the service of Krishna. So you can utilize your wealth, you can utilize your material things that you have in your life, your car, to go to the temple, to obviously you may have to go to work because you may need to have an income, and for those reasons you utilize those things so you can bring in an income which you can utilize for the service of Krishna in your own home, for your family, and also engage in services for the temple, like that. So Prabhupada gives an interesting story about a sage gives different types of blessings. So to a king's son, a prince, he blessed Rajaputra, Chiranjeeva, you are a king's son, prince, you live forever. And for a butcher, he said, he blessed him, you don't die, you don't live. To the brahmachari, he said, you better die. And to the sadhu, he said, either you live or either you die, or as you like. It doesn't make a difference. So this is quite instructive and quite a good learning we can get out of this. So the king's for the king's blessing, says better you live forever, because after your death you do not know what's going to happen to you. You're going to a hellish life. You have to live for some time or go on with your enjoyment, but then after that you can have a hellish existence. For the butcher, his living condition is so abominable. From the morning he has to slaughter so many animals, see the bloodstain, the ghastly scene. That is his livelihood. So what a horrible life this is. So neither don't live and don't die also, because even after death, so much hellish condition he'll have to see. And for the brahmachari, working in the guidance of strict disciplinary guidance, you better die, because you are so trained to enter the kingdom of God. So why should you take so much trouble? Better you die and go back home to Godhead. Or for the sadhu, the devotee, better you live, well, either you live or you die as you like, because the devotee is engaged in the ultimate devotion, ultimate duty of devotional service. He's revived his original consciousness of Krishna consciousness. So whether he lives in this material world, he'll still engage in Krishna consciousness. And if he passes from this material world, his desire is to always serve Krishna, like this. So he's always engaged in devotional work. And this is a really interesting point, because Srila Prabhupada makes a further point on this matter. This is found in Prabhupada Lilamrita. This is part of the Lilamrita where Srila Prabhupada is winding up his activities in the material world, and he's in Rishikesh, and devotees are contemplating the finer points of what Srila Prabhupada is saying. So Srila Prabhupada, they asked him some instructions. So Srila Prabhupada said, I could pass away very soon. I could pass from this world, depart from this world very soon. Srila Prabhupada says, either way, I have no objection to stay or leave. He said that there's a Bengali saying, if a denki, a wheat threshing machine, goes to heaven, what will it do there? It will thresh wheat. Because the thresher is constituted in a particular way, it will thresh wherever it goes. Similarly, the pure devotee, whether he is in the material world or the spiritual world, will serve Krishna. In this way, Srila Prabhupada was indicating that he had no personal anxiety, whether he was in this world or the next world or in any world. His endeavor would be Krishna consciousness and serving and devotional, pure devotional service. So like that, we can understand that being situated in devotional service is better than these designations, these designations of brahmachari, of prince, of yogi, bhogi, tyagi. The idea is to be situated in Krishna consciousness and pure devotion service as best we can. So when we move on to the next verse, verse 30, we can get the Sanskrit, please. Thank you. Okay. Tadopam sahritya Gira Sahasrani Vimukta Sangam Mana Adi Purushe Krishna Lasat Pita Pate Chatur Purushe Puraha Stiti Sita Amilata Drik Ritarayat. Okay, if you just go to the translation, please. Thank you. Thereupon, that man who spoke on different subjects with thousands of meanings, who fought on thousands of battlefields and protected thousands of men, stopped speaking and being completely freed from all bondage, withdrew his mind from everything else and fixed his wide-opened eyes upon the original personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna, who stood before him, four-handed, dressed in yellow garments that glittered and shined. Report by Srila Prabhupada. In the momentous hour of leaving his material body, Vishnudev set the glorious example concerning the important function of the human form of life. The subject matter which attracts the dying man becomes the beginning of his next life. Therefore, if one is absorbed in thoughts of the Supreme Lord, Sri Krishna, he is sure to go back to Godhead without any doubt. This is confirmed in the Bhagavad Gita 8.5 to 15. Verse 5, and whoever at the time of death quits his body remembering me alone, at once attains my nature. Of this there is no doubt. Verse 6, whatever state of being one remembers, when he quits his body, that state he will attain without fail. 7, therefore, Arjuna, you should always think of me in the form of Krishna and at the same time carry out your prescribed duty of fighting. With your activities dedicated to me and your mind and intelligence fixed on me, you will attain me without doubt. 8. He who meditates on the Supreme Personality of Godhead, his mind constantly engaged in remembering me, undeviated from the path. He, O Bharata, Arjuna, is sure to reach me. One should meditate upon the Supreme Person as the one who knows everything, as he who is the oldest, who is the controller, who is smaller than the smallest, who is the maintainer of everything, who is beyond all material conception, who is conceivable, and who is always a person. He is luminous like the sun, and being transcendental is beyond this material nature. One who at the time of death fixes his life air between the eyebrows, in full devotion, engages himself in remembering the Supreme Lord, will certainly attain to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. 11. Persons learned in the Vedas who are to Omkar and who are great sages in the renounced order enter into Brahman. Desiring such perfection, one practices celibacy. I shall now explain to you this process by which one may attain salvation. 12. The yogic situation is that of detachment from all sensual engagements, closing all the doors of the senses and fixing the mind on the heart and the life air at the top of the head. One establishes himself in yoga. 13. After being situated in this yoga practice and vibrating the sacred syllable Om, the supreme combination of letters, if one thinks of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, quits his body, he will certainly reach the spiritual planets. 14. For one who remembers me without deviation, I am easy to obtain, O son of Pritha, because of his constant engagement in devotional service. 15. After attaining me, the great souls who are yogis in devotion never return to this temporary world, which is full of miseries, because they have attained the highest perfection. So, very important point there to note that this return to this temporary world, which is full of miseries. We'll discuss that in a moment. Sri Vishnudev attained the perfection of quitting his body at will. He was fortunate enough to have Lord Krishna, the object of his attention, personally present at the time of death. He therefore fixed his open eyes upon him. He wanted to see Sri Krishna for a long time out of his spontaneous love for him. Because he was a pure devotee, he had very little to do with the detailed performance of yogic principles. Simply Bhakti yoga is enough to bring about perfection. Therefore, the ardent desire of Bhishmadev was to see the person of Lord Krishna, the most lovable object. And by the grace of the Lord, Sri Bhishmadev had the opportunity at the last stage of his breathing. So some really important points about the moment of death and how consciousness should be situated. So further to this, we also hear in Bhagavad Gita of a person's condition when they are in full consciousness of Krishna. This is described in verse 29 of chapter 5 of Bhagavad Gita. It's commonly known as the peace formula verse. A person in full consciousness of me, knowing me, the ultimate beneficiary of all sacrifices and austerities, the supreme lord of all planets and demigods, and the benefactor and well-wisher of all living entities, attains peace from the pangs of material miseries. And you can see in this verse, verse 30, it describes Bhishma being active and fully conscious in his fully awakened state and seeing the Lord present before him. And in this verse, we can also understand that Sri Krishna is standing in front of him in his four-handed form. This is also pointed in this, presented in this verse. So this peace formula in verse 29 of chapter 5 of Bhagavad Gita, we hear about three significant points. Bhaktaram Yagyatapasam, Lord Krishna is the beneficiary of all sacrifices and penances, so offering everything to the transcendental service of the Lord. 2, the second thing is Sarva Loka Maheshwara, is the supreme proprietor of all planets and demigods. No one is greater than him. He's greater than the greatest demigods. And Krishna is the supreme controller, or Ishvara. The living entity is under illusion in trying to lord it over material nature, but is dominated by the material energy. And thirdly, Suridam Sarvabhutana, benefactor and well-wisher of all living entities. So we can learn a lot from this verse because the idea is to be actively conscious about Krishna at all moments, in all circumstances, at all places. That is our aim. So we can understand that Lord is not partial to anyone, reciprocates according to your approach. So the more one is advanced, the more one is free from the clutches of Maya. And everything depends on one's practical performance of duties in Krishna consciousness. And these duties help one to control the senses and conquer the influence of desire and anger. To stand fast in Krishna consciousness and controlling them, and these mentioned passions, you can remain in the transcendental stage of Brahma Nirvana. Interestingly, we hear about Nirvana from in Buddhism quite commonly, but actually this mention is actually presented in Bhagavad Gita in about 3 different places. It's known as Brahma Nirvana. Also, we have to note that Ashtanga Yoga is automatically practiced in Krishna consciousness because the ultimate purpose is served. Ashtanga Yoga is a process of gradual elevation by 8 steps. And these 8 steps only preface perfection by devotion service. The highest perfection of life, only devotion service can award peace to the human being. To this extent, Maharaj Kuleshkara, a great devotee, and we'll find this in the Mukundamana Stotra, in verse 33, he prays, there's he prays that Krishna, this is the opportune time. Now I am healthy. I am quite in good health. So let me die immediately, thinking of you, because my whole purpose is to think of you, of your pastimes at the time of death. So generally, at the time of death, kalpa vatapitaha, the whole system becomes disarranged. There are coughing, there's coughing, there are headaches, there is some pain. There's generally there is general system breakdown. Sometimes the pain is so intolerable that the man who's going to die, he cries. The system within the body is so complicated that at any time it can be disarranged and it becomes a great source of pain. So Srila Prabhupada often reverts to a point made by his Guru Maharaj that when one is drowning, another one, brave man comes and says, I'll save him. So he jumps into the water and brings out the coat and shirt. Now this man is saved. So what will the people say? This is nonsense, because all he's done is brought out the save the clothing of the drowning man. Actually, the aim is to actually save the drowning man, not his clothes. So this is what we see in the world today. So Srila Prabhupada comments that they are simply concerned with this external body. Perhaps we are the only institution in the world which is teaching that you are not the body. You are not this body. This is the wonder of Krishna consciousness movement. We're the only institution throughout the whole world that we are teaching people, my dear sir, you are not this body. You are different from the body. And after death, you are going to get another body. Tata dehantara prapti. Simply education in the Bhagavad Gita, simple education in the Bhagavad Gita, they do not understand. They are big scholars, rascals, all rascals. Our difficulty is these rascals going on as scholars, dehantara buddhi. Their life is bodily concept of life, and they're passing as scientists, scholars, leaders, politicians, and they're leading us under yatanda. They are blind and they are leading us. So we are also put into difficulty. So only this Krishna consciousness movement can save the human civilization, get him raised to the platform of the gopis. We have got such a nice thing, these gopis, unalloyed Krishna love, that is wanted. So Srimad Bhagavatam also goes into further descriptions of how we can actually use our powers of discrimination. So in Srimad Bhagavatam, chapter 2, verse 15, with sword in hand, the intelligent men cut through the binding knots of reactionary work, karma, by remembering the personality of Godhead. Therefore, who will not pay attention to his message? And in verse 21, chapter 2, we also find Vidyate Hridaya Grantis, the knot of the material world needs to be cut by the sword of knowledge, like this. So the devotees are submissive, and therefore the transcendental knowledge descends from personality Godhead to Brahma, from Brahma to his sons and disciples in succession. This process is helped by the super soul within such devotees. That is the perfect way of learning transcendental knowledge. This enlightenment perfectly enables the devotee to distinguish spirit from matter, because the knot of spirit and matter is untied by the Lord. This knot is called ahangara, and it falsely obliges a living being to become identified with matter. As soon as this knot is loosened, therefore all the clouds of doubt are once cleared off. One sees his master and fully engages himself in transcendental loving service to the Lord, making full determination, making a full termination of the chain of fruitive action. In material existence, a living being creates his own chain of fruitive work and enjoys the good and bad effects of these actions, life after life. But as soon as he engages himself in loving service to the Lord, he at once becomes free from the chain of karma. These actions no longer create any reaction. So just a few points about the Kshatriya codes and the Kshatriya way of life, and also a few things that we can actually learn from great warriors like Bhishma and Arjuna. And it's especially important for people who have quite very busy lives, especially grahasthas. So we make so many arrangements for living in this material world. The material world is like a sandbox where children can play. The material energy is being transformed into objects like cars, houses, clothes, etc. And the conditioned soul identifies with these superfluous objects of so-called desire. Therefore, there is a need to truly understand the difference between inert matter and spirit or consciousness, a scientific understanding of the nature of matter, and also a scientific understanding of consciousness is very much needed. If the leaders of society fail to educate ordinary citizens, then we find ourselves in the chaos we see in the world today. This is also symptomatic of the material world devoid of understanding principles which accord with the absolute truth. This nescience is also symptomatic of Kali Yuga. The problems of birth, death, old age, and disease is common to all human beings and living entities in general, but is not considered even at a foundational level in the education systems of the world that we live in today. Therefore, devotees need to be firm in their resolve. The fight is not with other beings. On the contrary, the fight is within. How can I not be distracted from this glaring material energy, cars, televisions, computers, screen time? And how can I firmly be focused in devotional service? Like in any war, this requires reflection, effective strategies, planning, and setting objectives. In this way, whether you have challenges or opportunities, you can preempt issues before they become a cause of distraction from your real purpose and goals in life. For example, for those who work 30 to 35 to 40 hours a week, and even up to 60 hours sometimes a week, and then there is maintenance of the home, shopping, and other home-related activities. This can be overwhelming experience, which means feeling exhausted by the weekend, and in the name of relaxation and taking rest, the person can become habituated to do very little in their spare time. We can learn a lot from devotees like Bhishma and Arjuna. They are both formidable force in the battle of Kurukshetra, and both fought valiantly, courageously, and according to the Kshatriya code of conduct. In a similar way, we can employ these techniques and assimilate those in our daily lives to mitigate the challenges we see and take advantage of opportunities that arise in order to position ourselves favorably in Krishna consciousness. Many books on military strategies have been written by military commanders, such as The Art of War by Sun Tzu, Book of Fire Reigns Miyamoto Musashi, and also Lights of Chanakya Pandit. And these principles have been widely used in the corporate sector and modern enterprise and industry in places like Wall Street and Silicon Valley. The latest trend in the corporate sector is to move away from all process improvement business models like Six Sigma and towards super efficient business models like cloud accounting, systems thinking, and continuous improvement, Gestalt, lean principles, and team-led planning. Due to this new generation of ultra high-tech capabilities, a new wave of business improvement methods have been utilized by modern businesses to future-proof their business. It is no wonder in the corporate world there are so many businesses where transformation programs have been going on to align their business with emerging technologies and capabilities, especially in the last 5 years. So this is very present and current in the modern age. So we can learn from these strategies and also utilize some of these techniques in both our practice of Vedic sadhana bhakti and also working within teams at the temple. Creating strategies and understanding objectives goes hand in hand with practicing Krishna consciousness. We can use a blended approach of utilizing techniques we find in Krishna consciousness in our daily work routines, things like utilizing mindfulness and well-being, and use principles of modern business in our sadhana, so that we can free up our time and space so we can be active and conscious in Krishna consciousness. Things like team-led planning and collaboration, systems thinking, and continuous improvement, both individually and collectively as an organization. This also means understanding things in context before making any moves, like in a game of chess. A game of chess requires strategy, where there is defense and offense. If we just look at the idea of context, what does it actually mean? A dictionary definition will say the situation in which something happens, and that helps you to understand it. Or we can take this a bit further and understand context in 3 dimensions, in terms of time, in terms of place, in terms of circumstance. In any situation, if you consider these 3 things, you can get an understanding of what a good response to that situation or activity, depending on the variables or metrics involved, should be. For example, cooking at the temple, or distributing books on the street, or even reflecting on how your life, and how you want to direct it. If you think about your whole life, the time is year 2021 and Kali Yuga, about 5,000 years after Lord Krishna's departure. The place is the material world, a place where there is danger at every step. It is known as Dukkalayam Ashastadam. The circumstance is your psychophysical nature, or your potential, and how you've been conditioned to the modes of material nature. Another example, so for that, in that situation, action to take would be to follow the prescribed method of Vedic sadhana bhakti in Krishna consciousness. So take, for example, cooking at the temple. You may have, the time is, you've got 4 hours to cook for the Sunday feast. The place is temple kitchen and all its facilities. The circumstances, you may have 3 to 4 helpers and boga for the cooking. So the action to take, cook rice, sabji, a salad, and a sweet item, and offer it with love and devotion to Lord Krishna. That becomes prasadam for the devotees to relish. So we can use these Kshatriya techniques in an introspective way, but also in the practice of Krishna consciousness to prevent us from jumping from different phases of our life and taking bhakti, and rather than taking bhakti very cheaply or like the sahajas. We can introspect regularly what the prescribed methods actually are. Those with busy lifestyles have to find ways where there is sufficient time to regulate and balance spiritual activities with daily routine activities like work and family duties. We can examine our priorities like japa. What is the quality of our chanting? Is there sufficient time allocated during the day, during the week, and throughout the year? We can assess those things. 4 regulative principles. How effectively am I following spiritual vows? Do I need to put some extra things in place to help me? Reading. Am I reading and nothing is going in because I am too distracted and exhausted? Am I digesting the spiritual nutrition? Am I taking it nicely? Am I active and conscious while I'm reading? And am I actually getting spiritual sustenance? Or do I need to put some things in place so I can be better positioned for this, so that I can act on what I have learned in terms of vigna and realization, realized knowledge. So, and then also there's the Goshti and Anandi principle and Bhajanandi principle. How do I understand the categories of these 2 within these 2 principles, and what is their significance? So Srila Prabhupada highlights the importance of the Goshti and Anandi principle, that one who is eager to give Krishna consciousness to others. And he said this is especially important for those people coming into Krishna consciousness. And then there's the Bhajanandi who meditates in a secluded place. But that example is given of Haridas Thakur. He's a very, very elevated Vaishnava. And so not to jump to the position of Bhajanandi, because that can be very dangerous for your own practice in Krishna consciousness. So we have to understand that the material world is a place of suffering, dukkhalayam shashvatam, and a place where there is danger at every step. The practice of Krishna consciousness and awakening our Dharma of Krishna brings challenges and also fresh opportunities. It's hope against hope. And this is why when we consider our own sadhana, we have to be conscious about the kind of choices and decisions we make. This requires careful guidance, introspection, planning, and understanding, as this affects the way we behave towards Krishna, devotees, and also consider the time, place, and circumstances we find ourselves in. So I'm just going to read a little bit from a poem by Srila Prabhupada. The poems are a great way of understanding the author's psychology. So if you really want to understand Srila Prabhupada's psychology and when he went to the West, what was going on internally, we get a glimpse into this from his poems. So I'm going to read a bit because Gita Jayanti has passed, just recently passed. I'm going to read a little bit from a poem called Vrindavan Bhajan, and it's titled, part of the title is The Bhagavad Gita Destroys Internal Bondage. So as Krishna's disciple, Arjuna listened to the Lord's recitation of the Bhagavad Gita, hearing which destroys all ignorance and material bondage. Although Arjuna's material bondage was destroyed, he never renounced the external world as a sannyasi does. Following his example, those who are householders can understand the true message of the Bhagavad Gita. I am now firm and free from doubt that I am prepared to act according to your instructions. Bhagavad 18.73. Arjuna spoke this most perfect of mantras and has fought that battle and became forever famous. The Vaishnava devotees of the Lord are typically non-violent and indifferent to the world. They simply chant the holy name on their japa beads. How then can Arjuna, a warrior in the midst of worldly activity, be considered a devotee? Someone may ask. So section 16. A Vaishnava is completely peaceful and simply spends his time chanting japa on his beads. Whoever speaks in this way only eats the mind's bananas. He reaches a false conclusion based on external appearances. A devotee of the Lord is naturally gentle in disposition and bears no malice towards the living beings, but that does not mean he is a weakling and possesses no valor, as many people foolishly think. In the two great battles of ancient India, there were two great heroes. Both were exalted devotees of the Lord, and thus they were victorious. It is known throughout the entire world that one who is a Vaishnava never fights a battle out of desires for personal sense gratification. Those who have never seen a true Vaishnava mistakenly claim that a Vaishnava is inactive. Actually, a Vaishnava is always active, but only in the Supreme Lord's devotional service. The neophyte devotee, being bereft of true life, does not engage in such devotional service to the Lord. Hoping to earn the reputation of a so-called sage, he pretentiously retires to a secluded cottage. Srila Nityananda Rai is worshipped by all devotees because even when he was physically attacked by the degraded souls Jagai and Madai, he simply bestowed upon them ecstatic love of God. Lord Gaurahari had angrily raised his Sudarshan disc to kill those envious offenders of the Vaishnavas, but by Lord Nityananda's mercy, they were transformed into Vaishnavas. So I'll pause there for today. So thank you very much for listening and being present in this program. So I will. So if you like, you can. If you have any questions or if you've got any comments or thoughts, please feel free. We'll just have a look if there's anything in the chat box. There's nothing, then that's just have a look. Okay. So if there's any thoughts or questions or points anyone would like to share, please feel free. Hare Krishna. Okay, thank you, everybody. Okay, so I'll pass it on back to Santosh Prabhu.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu.
And today, so thank you, Prabhu. Santosh Prabhu. Okay, so
Thank you.
Srimad Bhagavatam ki Jai.
Jai. Thank you, Prabhu, for a wonderful class. And yes, we'll keep hearing from you in the next one. Thank you again. This is all your creation, if you remember. So thank you so much, Prabhuji. Haripur.
Hare Krishna, everybody. Thank you for attending and hope to see you all next week. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Thank you so much, Bhaktivan Prabhu.
Hare Krishna.
His Grace Bhaktivan Prabhu ki jai.
Jai.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Thank you, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Thank you, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu. Thank you. Wonderful class. Thank you, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna, thank you. 122.